Hi, I'm Joe Wesley of J&L Creative Solutions, and this is the Joe and Lizzy weekly podcast about mindfulness. And for those who are seeing us for the first time, thank you for joining. Lizzy will not be here today, and for those who are coming back, the rules don't change today. Lizzy is away this week, getting some much needed vacation time. So I'm doing this by myself, and different background, nothing marketing here. And today's purpose, I thought I'd take this opportunity to recap what we've been talking about. For those who are new to us, for those who are coming back, the concept here is I'm a left brain kind of guy. I'm very proud of it. I'm like 99.1% logic and reasoning and only 0.9% id syndrome, like Freud would say. Whereas Lizzy is, as I know of her, is the right brain persona. I call it the yin and yang stuff because it doesn't make any sense to me. But what does intrigue me is when she talks about being more healthy, being more successful, being happier in life. And I am somewhat inquisitive, so let me learn about this. But before I get into this program, commercial break, please remember, whether you visit us through LinkedIn, through YouTube, or Facebook, to like us. Always ask questions because we want to know what works for you or doesn't. We're not here to hear ourselves talk. We're here for you. And the purpose is I'm trying to make sense. Let me stop. Remember to subscribe. See, I get so enthusiastic I forget the commercial side of this program. Remember to share us. Ask questions. Even if you're not looking at us at 8 o'clock in the morning, we do audit I call it the recap versions that persist. So leave your comments there. If you have any questions, any recommendations, we would really appreciate that. But having said that, back to why we're doing it today. It's a recap. This mindfulness thing, does it really make sense? Does it really work? And I'm still on the fence on this one. But here's my story. My wife, people respond to her like in a magnet. She just draws people to her. She has that niceness, that sincerity, that competency about her that people see. And again, I'm more the left brain kind of persona. Well, she likes this mindfulness stuff. And I'll say it like that because that's how I see it. So on a Sunday morning in the TV room, if I'm walking around the corner and first thing I hear the chimes softly in the background, I know I'm going to see, when I turn the corner and see the TV, I'm going to see the sheer white lace curtains, multiple layers, the white candles with the light kind of dancing in the wind like this. I'm going to see behind all of that this tall white guy with a white beard and white hair and a white gown talking, I'm going to help make your life so much better for you. I've got to leave the room before I puke. My wife loves that stuff. So this mindfulness thing makes no sense to me. I have a curious mind. So I said, well, how did I meet Lizzy? It was a Zoom group. We had initially, hi, how are you? But we had some curiosity. She has a sharp mind and she's a warm persona. So I said, let's connect some more. And we're talking about her industry of mindfulness. And I was intrigued. I said, well, you're the first person I've known that I can have dialogue with without having to commit one way or the other. So we agreed to let's initially do one session of mindfulness so I can ask you some questions to Lizzy. And she agreed to it. We set 15 minutes. Our mutual available time was Thursday mornings at 8 o'clock Eastern Standard. And let's poke at it. And we had no idea where it may or may not go. But she has an open mind. I really respect her about that. It's not like, why not try anything? But if it has possibly some value, let's give it a look at to see where it may or may not go. And I felt the same way. So that was our common draw. And what she does, but I told her, I says, look, what you talk about doesn't make sense to normal people like myself. I says, you quote Einstein. Who's Einstein in terms of some value to me? So maybe if I can make sense of what you're presenting and providing. And by the way, in her world, in her market, she is a rock star. I have to say that about her. So, okay, she has credibility. I'm rational enough, neutral enough to recognize the value of that, that the people who respond to her feel very highly about her, that when I speak with her, it's very engaging, very interactive. So there's got to be something there that I'm missing. So we began this podcasting. And so it's not like my role, it's my opportunity to challenge her on what she's saying, because it's not intuitive to me. So, for example, I have to read my notes because this whole program is not intuitive to me. So the concept is, I spoke about my initial flavor of mindfulness. And what she taught, and by the way, I thought being mindful is you had to clean your brain out and stare at a blank wall for 2.5 hours. And somehow that makes you a better person. And I understand there are different schools and techniques of how to use this mindfulness concept. I see it as awareness. And maybe what Lizzy is saying, I say maybe because I'm not talking on her behalf, I'm still trying to figure this out, is you clean space out in your brain. So there's a focus, I guess, as opposed to a blankness, if that's such a word. And again, that seems to be Lizzy's school. And because you create space, you can then be aware of your moment, your environment, who you are. And somehow that makes the world better. And one of our bigger disagreements is that she'll say, well, you have to be mindful, and then things work out. She doesn't quite say it so glibly, but that's how I'm interpreting it. And I'm saying, whoa, it sounds like you're turning on a light switch, and you turn the switch on and things happen. So I gave a test to that. She said, well, not quite like that, Joe, at one of our earlier talks, but if you set your mind to it, it's more likely to happen. So we have a week hiatus. We don't rehearse our talks. I come back the next week. I said, I tried this mindfulness thing. Friday evening around 4 o'clock, I said to myself, boy, my wife is in the house. I really would like a surf and turf for dinner. And if I think of this hard enough, and I had how much the beef that I wanted, the filet mignon even better, and the big lobster surf and turf concept. I like French fries as part of it. Give me some coleslaw. I'm good to go. And I really, really focused my mind on that concept, because the way I heard it from Lizzy, when you get in that state, things are happening. Well, nothing did happen. In fact, my wife came to me and said that evening, are we going to order anything for dinner tonight? It was not quite what I had in mind. So I made this point to Lizzy, our following podcast, and she looks at me and says, well, Joe, you have to put some effort into this to help make it happen. Maybe give your wife compliments. Maybe do something special for her leading up into Friday. Now, I'm not knocking the value of any of what she just said, but that certainly was not my concept of being mindful. I thought all I had to do was to find my favorite couch or chair, lean back, and just put my mind to it, and it's going to happen. So the one thing I did learn is mindfulness, being mindful, is an active process. It doesn't just happen. And that's where she and I will still sometimes have dialogue. I look at it more like a rheostat. I don't think I get zapped by lightning, and therefore that's where I am. So part of my queries, part of my asking Lizzy, well, how does people start in that process? It's not like it's going to happen all by itself, that I knock my head and say I have to be aware. So the little baby steps one can take. So we give different examples of life. And Lizzy she walks her talk. I'll say that about her, that she's fell into mindfulness purely by mistake on the invite of a good friend of hers. And I won't say by mistake, but she didn't see it coming, because she was having challenges in her life, and she readily will share that as part of her journey. And as a result of that experience, mindfulness was introduced to her, and that became her light. and her path. And so part of what I figured out so far, this mindfulness thing, it can be a challenge to figure it out on your own because you have a litany of history that blocks you into where you are. But maybe you might have friends who see where they might provide you an option, an opportunity. No hard sell, no guarantee. By the way, I am not pushing it myself here. But I call the concept of it giving forward, and maybe to be paid back. So that's not what this talk about today. It's about the journey Lizzy and I have had to get to our, actually, this is the 72nd talk we've had so far. I have to look at the number screen flowing at the bottom of the screen and refer to my notes. So the concept is, does it make any sense? What dragged my left brain into it, that I try to be resourceful. And anything that doesn't harm me, that is doable, like I can make it happen in a reasonable time frame, I'm going to give it consideration. I have a favorite phrase: if opportunity knocks, even if you're not in the mood for company, at least see who's at the door, because you never know. So this is continued because I have to admit I'm learning concepts of wellness. I'm learning concepts of mindfulness. I'm learning concepts of technique for success. Stress exists no matter how it works. It's a part of who we are. Now here's my left brain kicking in. I'm a biology major. Because I've heard people say your life should be stress-free. Ideally, that sounds good. But Mother Nature, who's been around for a long time, chicks and baby turtles in particular, they each have beaks, little hooks on their mouth or nose that they use to peck through their shell. And it's been shown it's hard work. It's been shown if you break the shell for the chicks and the baby turtles, they don't thrive. They don't survive. Clearly, Mother Nature has decided if they're going to thrive in the real world, they need to be challenged. They need to develop, even at that early stage of life, a will to live and to fight for it and deal with the aggravation of getting out that shell. And it just hit me, perhaps that's what mindfulness is all about, is dealing with the aggravation of getting out of that shell that would enclose you in otherwise. And again, I'm not here to preach the gospel, you might say. Have to refer to my notes again. So what we're talking about here is that mindfulness is, as I see it, a concept that, as Lizzy likes to say, don't react. Don't let the moments around you control you. That you have enough self-awareness that you have some say in your world in terms of how you might want to go about what you do. Now, that does not mean, as I see it, to be oblivious of anybody else or not have any concerns for anybody else. But I know people, and certainly Lizzy will share examples where people feel so overwhelmed, justifiably so for a lot of people. I grew up in a single-parent household, and I was the oldest of 3 children. My mother, bless her still, is a person that made a commitment to us, to her. So yes, she was a parent. She was a sole provider. She was a nurturer. She encouraged us, despite the headwind she was going through, to all of us have degrees, higher education. None of us have ever been in jail or on drugs, as far as I know. I'm pretty sure about that. And I'm not going to say it's perfection, but I respect my mother because she had the mindset to not allow circumstances to make her a statistic. And I think that's an example that I'm giving of my concept of being mindful, that you are self-aware. So I see it, my role with Lizzy is, and it's not intuitive, by the way. If it were, I guess we might all be mindful. But I see my role with Lizzy is to draw out of her a language other than Einstein talk that makes sense to normal people like myself, that we may or may not want to give her philosophy, her style, her school a look at. My role is I help people discover themselves. I call it, I help you discover or find your secret sauce. So for me, this is part of my journey, that if I can help learn more about what her philosophy represents in terms of technique and value and share it out, it enhances the value she can provide to the world around us. It declares the ability, the value I can provide for my audience on her behalf. So in that sense, it's a win-win scenario. Again, I hope this makes some sense for you, that mindfulness could very well have a play in your life of value. I'm still digging at that. That more importantly, if I'm not being clear, along with Lizzy, let us know. If you have questions, let us know. Share this with other people, get their input. Hey, does this stuff make any sense to you? Maybe it is to me or it isn't. LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube. Remember to sign in to YouTube through your Google account so you can leave comments. We do all of that. I'm Joe Wesley, J&L Creative Solutions, J&L Creative Solutions of the Joe Wesley and Lizzy Gabor podcast on mindfulness. Thank you for joining. We'll see you next week.